The second big word for centurions is king. And this is going to sound like a bone to pick, and maybe it is. I think there's a difference between the calling upon a king and the calling upon a priest. When I think about the role of a king, it is to grow, to protect, to plan, to have store up, to defend, and part of that growth actually is also is to play offense. It's to create space. I picture a garden wall, and the job of the king is to build the wall and grow the footprint of the garden. The job of the priest is to define where within that space will the Lord be found, to help shape what life flourishes within the garden. The priests have no inheritance. The priest's job is to serve in front of the Lord, to deliver ministry, to remain singly focused on whose we are. And then I think there's a different accountability as well. When you see in the Old Testament, when a king dies, there is so-and-so did right in the sight of the Lord or did evil in the sight of the Lord. There's a summary statement. And we don't really see that in the same way with priests. I think we need both of these. And I think one of the problems that I look at in our contemporary Christian cultural space is that kings have abdicated their role and have had priests take that. And so we end up with, instead of, if you look at the original tithing numbers, it should come out to about 23.33%. But instead we have, 2%, and that's US GNP. But and tithing numbers go all over the place when you talk about by church. But when I think about it, I look at how effective a business needs to be to run, how that rule set works, and then a portion of a king's success gets carved out and then handed over to churches and nonprofits, which in so many ways are the most effective impact and vision choking entities in the world. We end up with just this pittance, and instead of the 23.33%, you've got, and that 23.33 starts with whose we are, then who we are, and then who we are to the world. Those are the three layers of tithe. And the priest ends up trying to do way more than is the priest's job. Anyway, this, as I said, is going to sound like a bone to pick. I'm not frustrated with the priests, though. The priests are true to who they are. What I get frustrated with is whether or not the kings can say they're doing their job and responding to their calling effectively. I think there's a whole lot of room for more kings to step into their authority. And again, and it's not power over. It's complementary skill set and roles and responsibilities. I also don't think that all people are either king or priest. Most people are not. Most people are the people. And so there's a responsibility between these two types of leadership that is seeking to address how will the people be led, loved, protected, honored. How do the sheep get fed? And so there's an opportunity to grow and to think about, if you are a centurion, you are likely also a priest. And that has connections to fivefold and a bunch of different ways of seeing who we are. But one of the challenges that I'm interested in helping more centurions explore and step into is, what does it look like to build a better garden wall so that a better garden life can happen? There's a bunch of stuff we can look at to unpack that. So if you think in terms of how many hours does a person spend at work over the course of their career compared to at church, it's about 80,000 hours over the lifetime of a career. And depending on how you look at church, if you go at all, A pretty active churchgoer might spend 4 to 6 thousand hours. That includes Sunday, it includes Bible study, and it includes a mission trip here and there. And so, how hard and how much impact the 80,000 hours has to seek to have compared to how hard the priest has to pedal to make the church hours impactful, it's not even close. And so, what does it look like if you're a king? And the king, by the way, as the employer, has the opportunity. People need to have the job. They're aware of it. And so they're going to be there. They're going also to project all sorts of daddy issues and all the things that we need that ultimately have to do with a longing for the Father. They bring that to work with them. Whereas you go to church and there's more of a thank you for being here, or a guilt, but there's not really the same sort of cultural payoff. And so, what does it look like to be a person who owns and tends the garden in the name of the Lord? And I think the big flip is, instead of the kings going to the church, what does it look like for kings to invite priests into the workplace or into the garden? And the job, again, of the king is to hold that space and to make available the conditions for heartbreak, in the sense of like your heart being broken for the Lord so that something good grows back. We started with the centurion and the paralyzed servant. What does it look like to offer a space that invites people to meet Jesus, and without having to slide tackle them almost, which tends to be more of the church function? There needs to be a greater resurgence of king voices, or the priests will continue to burn out, fade out, manipulate, and the body will continue to become less relevant. I think it's an interesting word, and it's one of the words that's worth walking around when we're having Centurion conversations.